So the last chapter ended very much quicker than I expected. So I shall continue the next chapter out of Joan Grant's book, So Moses Was Born. There's only a couple of chapters left, and I am only interested to see what happens. This is the reading 23, the 23rd reading, and I write the details at the bottom of my upload. The Son of Horus. A lion and a lioness lay in the shade of a thicket of stunted acacia on the edge of the cultivation. Between them sat Moses, staring towards the mud brick wall of the Hebrews' village, which shimmered in the noon heat. The man was afraid, as he had not been afraid since he left the well of the 3 sycamores to become Pharaoh. But this fear had been a new and more terrible quality, for the boy had feared his mother, but the man feared himself. He tried to find comfort in the reflection that at least he had been able to conceal his fear from his brothers, perhaps even from Pempi, but he succeeded well enough for them to believe that he had trembled not with fear but with anger. He could lie, he must lie, to defend himself against their insight, but he could no longer afford to lie to himself. He found that examining his heart was more subtly painful than it had been to pull away the crusted bandage from the arrow wound he had received in his first campaign. Did he really love the girl whom he had known for only one night in the pavilion among the reeds? Was it she whom he loved, or only his memory of Eerie, who, with the passing years, had become his secret excuse for his failure to love women? Caradon had pretended she was dead, but was this only a proof that Caradon knew him to be incapable of real affection? He tore his thumbnail to the quick, but hardly noticed the sharp flick of pain. He was Pharaoh, the greatest of all men, except in the eyes of his family. Was it to hide from their pity that he pretended he could demand love as well as worship? If they knew that he fled from love, as lesser men fled from arrows, he would no longer be able to believe in his own majesty. He had dreamt of the hawk, but was it the hawk of Horus, or only a symbol of his belief in his own omnipotence? Another facet of the arrogance which had caused him to allow his architects to show him as Ramoses the Pharaoh, offering to Ramoses the god. A still more fearful doubt assailed him. Had Horus caused him to love a Hebrew girl so as to humble his pride? No, this was blasphemy. The pride of Pharaoh was the pride of Egypt, and the 2 lands were beloved of Horus. Why did Ramoses fear Hebrews? Because Yahweh was so powerful that he could protect them even against the gods of Egypt, whom they steadfastly refused to acknowledge. Even Nebuchadnezzar could not understand the power of Yahweh. But if, through the mother of his magical son, he could learn the secret by which Yahweh received such implacable fealty, he might be able to cause the Hebrews to work for instead of against Egypt. He began to smile by a bold stroke, so bold that it would be remembered even after Kadesh was forgotten. He would set a Hebrew queen beside him on the throne of Egypt. The whole of Syria would be confounded by such a spectacular gesture. Without an arrow being lost, the treasure rooms of all the northern princes would be put at the disposal of the 2 lands. And the beauty of the plan lay in its subtlety. None of the northern princes would realize that the idea, the Hebrew idea, was diminishing them at once. It diminished their natural master, the land of the Nile. Even in the moment when he envisaged his triumph, doubt and suspicion returned to torment him. Dared he trust love? He had loved Eerie, and in a lesser degree he had loved Nefertari. And though both women he had deeply and through both women he had deeply suffered, could love, the love for which he had always longed, come to him through a Hebrew? If only Eerie were here, she would tell him the truth. Eerie, he said aloud, have you forgotten the boy whom I used to be? The lion raised his head, a growl rumbling in his throat, and bounded away towards the boy, approaching by the narrow path through the bean field. The lioness blinked lazily, for she had recognized the boy. It was Apu. Apu, thought Ramosis, Apu, the son of Irie. So perhaps Irie had not forgotten me. He waited anxiously for the boy to speak. Had he come only to bring a message from Neb? Instead of making a formal obeisance, Apu sat cross-legged on the ground beside Pharaoh, his arm around the neck of the lion. He appears to know you. My lions are not usually so friendly with strangers. I've not met him before, but I thought that if he let me approach you, I would know that it is right for me to say what is in my heart. Speak freely, Apu, Ramosis smiled. You have his full attention and mine, if you wish it. I will tell his mate to rouse herself. I should not have dared to follow you here unless my mother had said to me the night before I left the living water that if I should ever feel that I had something very important to say to Pharaoh, I must speak to him as though he were only the younger brother of Nebunefer. He hesitated. She said that I should speak as though you were my father. I wish that she had allowed you to be my mother, my son, said Ramosis gently. Quen is my father, yet several times I have been taken for one of your concubine's children. Not a royal concubine, of course. I think it is because she has always loved you. If I ask something which sounds very impertinent, will you be angry? In Erie's name I promise not to be angry. If you doubt my word, consider your profile, for until this moment I thought that only I could sire that nose. Do you really want a son who's greater than yourself? Perhaps it's different for a pharaoh, but I think very few men want such a son. When they are old, they do, Apu. How do you know what you will feel when you are old? I was standing near you when Prince Merenta won the chariot race. Why did you challenge the holder of the golden whip to the same course and win by 3 lengths, unless you wanted to prove to everyone that you are still a better charioteer than your son? A shrewd question, said Ramosis ruefully. Merenta boasts even louder than I did at his age. I tried to prove to him that he has less reason. Will it not be very difficult to honor the son of Horus when you see him in the body of a baby? His spirit may be greater even than your own, but he will still look and sound and smell like a baby. The boy spoke so earnestly that Ramosis laughed. Horus bringing up wind in a milky gurgle, I confess that I had never considered how difficult it may be to feel humble before one who is so effectively disguised. Having taken so much thought for my welfare, have you a plan to protect me? I will tell you what Neb has planned, but I hope you will not agree with it. He intends to take Tamas to the Hebrew village and bribe the aunt to allow them to present at the birth of your child. At first Neb wanted her to be taken to the old palace, but Karadan persuaded him not to do so, in case the child should be only an ordinary one, like the others. Pempi agreed with her husband, so that if they have to disappoint you again, nothing more need to be said about his having chosen a Hebrew for you by mistake. So Pempi had lied to protect Karadan, thought Ramosis, and wished that he could inspire the loyalty which would make women lie for him. They tried to lie to him often enough. Even if the child is an ordinary child, the mother is not an ordinary woman, said Ramosis. That is why I think they are both so important to you. Neb tells the people who come to the living water that they will never be happy until they learn to be ordinary. It is ordinary to be a man or a woman, to be old or young, to be healthy or crippled, ordinary to be born and to die and to be born again. Neb says, and I know it is important, because I have seen what happens to people after they have understood what he means, that once a man realizes that his particular burden is shared by thousands and thousands of other people, he can also begin to share the joy of those who are happy. Happiness is not ordinary, Apu. It can come from very ordinary things. Sleep and food, a fire when your night is cold and dark, or a cool wind from the river in the hot weather, and loving and being loved. Loving is a very ordinary thing. It is not ordinary for Pharaoh to be loved. I thought we were talking about Ramoses. The boy's hands held more firmly to the mane of the lion, as though seeking courage from it. I think Horus prefers ordinary people and would like his son to be born in an ordinary way. Surely if he had wanted anything else, he would have asked Ptah to make a grown-up body for his son. It would be very easy magic for a god. Such a thought had never occurred to my mind, said Ramoses slowly. Apu, how can I learn to be ordinary? What would an ordinary man do after he had discovered that the girl he loved was alive? He would go to her at once in case she was as unhappy without him as he had been without her. Of course. You see how easy it is? What else would he do? He would invent an ordinary story if the truth was too extraordinary for her to accept all at once. He could say that he had been suddenly ordered to the south, so suddenly that he had no chance of telling her that he would come back the first moment he could. When he came back, he found she had left her village, and he had been searching for her in other villages, till at last he had found her again. Does he find her before the baby is born? He must. That is very important. You have agreed that Horus wants his birth to be ordinary, and it is ordinary for the mother and father both to be there when a child is born. I have fathered a large number of children, but I was present at the birth only on one occasion. No doubt your experience is wider than mine. Not much wider, said Apu. I was with a herdsman's wife when she had her first daughter, rather unexpectedly in the hill pastures. It seemed quite easy. She squatted with her back against her husband's knees, and I took the baby's head in my hands when it came out of her. She made much less fuss than one of the royal mares. Neb has seen 23 children, no, 24 counting Duat twins, born during the last month, so with us to help you, there will be no need to be frightened. And where am I supposed to prove my courage? At the house of her aunt. You think that I, Pharaoh, could go to the Hebrew village? Apu, the idea is preposterous. It might be preposterous for Pharaoh, but not for Neb's brother. Do you think Neb will let his child be born without his being there to help? I have not said that I will refuse to be present. Karadan must make some suitable arrangements. She can be taken to his house. Padma says that women only have their babies easily if their minds are at peace. How could she be peaceful if she is suddenly taken to a very magnificent house amongst strangers? How would she believe that an ordinary soldier could take his woman to the vizier's palace? Oh, Ramoses, don't you understand anything of what ordinary people feel? A slow tear trickled down Apu's cheek and fell on the ear of the lion. I thought you loved Habaka. Habaka? Apu, do you know that this is the first time I have heard her name? She said to me, for reasons which are no longer important, that you could not really hate someone unless you knew their name. Perhaps I had to know her name before I could be sure that I love her. Then you do love her. Will you come with us to the village? Ramoses looked towards the drab walls which had been built to enclose the enemies of Egypt. Yes, Apu, I love her, and I find that I long to be ordinary. I stop this here. Happy Friday.